In this knife talk video, we're talking about Draftwriter knives. Kind of the first thing to say about Draftwriter knives is that they're budget knives. So all of these knives were under $20 each, and they're all made in China, but the brand itself is owned by Smoky Mountain Knife Works. So that's something that, I think a lot of people buy these on eBay and sometimes on Amazon and things like that, and don't realize that the brand is owned by Smoky Mountain Knife Works, which is a USA company, one of the biggest, I think, online dealers for knives, and they have a lot of traditional knives. And they actually do, it's interesting, I've never tried using it, but they do have a limited lifetime warranty from Smoky Mountain Knife Works. So, for being the fact that these are usually, if not always, under $20 knives, that's an interesting thing. I've never really cared enough to use the warranty, and I'm guessing that Smoky Mountain Knife Works kind of is aware of that, that usually when you buy a $10 or $15 knife, a lot of people are not going to end up using the warranty when they have issues, which I'll talk about on this knife and about some other knives I've had. But that being said, I've found a great knife for the money. So I have a few here. I've had a good number of Draftwriter knives over the years that I've been buying traditional knives, and I've had different experiences. So the first one I'm going to talk about here is, I believe, the oldest one of these that I have right now, which is this one. So this is a moose type pattern from Draftwriter, and it's interesting for a couple reasons. First of all, it has what they call here black bone handle scales, and it's not super dark black. I actually have dyed some bone knife handles black and gotten a little bit of a darker black, but this is a really cool color. My girlfriend actually says that this is one of, if not the prettiest knives I've had, or I have, because of that. And I've actually thought about getting other of this series of Draftwriters, just because she seems to like them. And it's always nice when other people can appreciate the knives that you're always carrying and using and stuff. But I also like it a lot, and both because of the black bone handle, which is unique and I think good looking. I don't know how well it's showing here on the camera, but it's almost like a bluish color. There's some black here in the center where it's darker, but it looks like camel bone. Like if you've seen the Northwoods or Great Eastern Cutlery knives that have camel bone, I don't know if this is camel bone, but it seems to have taken the dye more like camel bone than like normal cattle bone. So, it's a really good looking dye job that they did on these handle scales, like a deep bluish, kind of splotchy color. But along with that, you can see that it has copper bolsters. So not brass, but copper. And that's really cool for a few reasons. You can see that these ones have patinaed quite a bit. That's because I've used and carried this knife quite a bit. I bought this knife actually because I was going on a moose hunt with my dad and brother and one of my dad's friends last year, and I wanted to have a moose knife with me just because why not, I don't think I knew that there was a case moose knife in current production, and the Great Eastern Cutlery 81 moose knife had not been released yet. I think it was in the works and like about to be released when I was leaving. So unfortunately I couldn't get one of those. Haven't gotten one yet. But I got this and I'm really happy with it. So first of all here, to kind of talk about how the Draftwriters are made, you can see that this does not have a separator between the two blade springs. And there is some gaps. So, that's something that, if you buy a Draftwriter, I wouldn't be surprised if you get it and it has gaps between the back springs or, between the liners and things like that. Now, it shouldn't have huge, like warpy looking gaps, but something like this where it's not going to affect anything at all, that's not something that I really get upset about on a Draftwriter. I mean, this knife I know it was under $20. I don't remember exactly how much, but I think it was around 17 or something, 15 maybe. But it's a moose knife, so that means it has 2 full-size blades. And another interesting thing about this knife is the blade shapes. It has this kind of very Turkish or upswept tipped clip point, and you can see that it's kind of a dark washed blade, which is different for a traditional. Not a lot of traditionals have that kind of finish on the blade. A lot of Rough Riders have a match strike nail nick. It's not something I'm fired up about, but I think it's a nice-ish touch. Most Rough Riders are 440 steel, and I'll talk about the steel in general later, but that's what most of them are going to be. And then this, you can see that it has half stops and good action. So it snaps open and closed also pretty well. Didn't have to mess with that too much. The blades came pretty centered, if I remember correctly. This secondary blade here, which often on a moose knife is a spear point or a spay blade, and this is a spay blade, but it's a very different kind of spay blade. You can see that this one also has half stops. This was a little bit lazier on opening, but after using it and such, it's better. It has kind of an upswept spay blade with a more gradual belly, and I think it's a kind of a cool knife, and especially for a moose knife. I actually used this knife to help skin a moose, and it's a good blade shape for that. Now, the 440 steel is definitely not a super steel, so it's not going to hold its edge forever. But a nice blade shape. Both of those blade shapes are nice, but especially this one. I think that this is a nice skinning blade shape. And along with the kind of unique aspects of this knife are going to be true about all of these knives, maybe less so this one, but a lot of Rough Rider knives, they seem willing to try very unique, very different things. That's really what I appreciate about Rough Rider knives, is that you can get a pattern that you don't get to try from someone else, or a knife with unique aspects, which, like on this knife, the copper hardware, the black wash blades, and the unique blade shapes, and the kind of cool black scales, all very interesting, different things that you don't really see from other knife companies very often, all for a very good price range. So to kind of move on to the other knives here, that's true with a lot of Rough Rider knives, like I say. So this is my newest Rough Rider. I just got this one. This one, again, was right around $15. But it's interesting for a few reasons. So the first thing you probably notice is that if the lighting shows it, I don't know how well it shows it, but is that it has brass bolsters. So again, I mean, like GEC does some brass bolsters. I think that Case has done brass bolsters. The GEC 44 gun stock is going to have brass. Some of them are going to have brass bolsters, but it's relatively rare, and I think that on the right knife with the right covers, it looks really good, and that's the case with this. When I took this knife out, I was really surprised and happy with how it looked. Really good looking knife, and you can see that it has kind of a blood red jigged bone handle covers there, and they're really well done. I mean, this bone is a good looking bone, and I think that honestly it looks like really well done bone. Like, I wouldn't be disappointed, I don't think, to see specifically the covers on this knife on a more expensive knife, like definitely a Case. I think it looks nicer than a lot of Case covers, but I don't think I'd be disappointed with this too much on a gradation cutlery knife. I think it looks better than some of theirs, definitely worse than some of theirs, or probably worse than a good number, at least the ones that I buy of theirs, but I wouldn't be surprised to see it on them. So it's well done, and it looks good with the brass bolsters. Going to like the build of this, it's really well done. So there's some kind of sharp corners on the back springs and the liners, but nothing like crazy, nothing that you really would notice if you got this and weren't like a collector. Very well put together. Really no gaps. I mean, there's, again, some places where it sticks up more on the liner than the back spring, but no gaps where you can like see light through it or anything like that. So it's a well put together knife, And kind of on the same, you know, thing with the build here, the action on this knife is really good. It snaps open really nicely, really solid snap open, and then it snaps closed really well also. No half stops on that blade. Can't remember on this one. We'll look at that one later. But really nice action. I mean, it's not the smoothest action in the world, but definitely more than I would expect on a $15 knife. And you can see that this is a trapper pattern, so it has kind of a relatively classic clip point blade shape. It's kind of a thin point, comes to a nice kind of pointy point there. I like it, nothing wrong with that. And you can see that both blades are really well centered. So you're probably noticing that this blade looks different and, you know, wondering why. It's actually ceramic. So that is very, very unique. I don't really know of any other traditional knives with a ceramic blade, and definitely not with one steel blade and one ceramic blade. So this is a kind of a classic spade blade like you would see on most trapper patterns, but rather than steel, it's ceramic, and it's a black ceramic. So you know, kind of cool looking with the dark jigging here with the red bone, and it makes for just a very unique knife. I mean, like I say, I don't know that I've ever seen another traditional with a ceramic blade, and I was a little bit concerned with a few things about that when I was getting this, but I wanted to get it because it was the last one available from the seller who I was you know, looking at it on, and you know, it's just so unique. But I'm really surprised and happy with how well it's put together. First of all, I wondered if they would have to kind of leave it a little bit loose, you know, for fear of the brittleness of the ceramic. There's no play at all. There's no play in either blade here, but you know, opens very snappily. The action, another thing, I thought they might make the spring really light to keep it from bouncing too much and you know, cracking or being brittle. The spring is solid. It, you know, snaps open, and no half stop. It's actually smoother than the other blade. So you can see snaps closed, it's centered, the tip is not proud, which is good because, you know, you don't want to be grinding on ceramic. And I tested the edge, and it's ground thin. It's gonna, you know, cut. It's gonna be a good edge, and kind of along with the use of a spade blade, this will be good, you know, for skinning things and things like that. So again, really unique, really cool knife from Draftwriter, and really well made. I'm really happy with this one. Now moving on to one that is also pretty unique, but isn't as well made. This, like, I think that it, you know, they're going to donate some money from this to a heart health or cardiovascular charity. I'm not even 100% sure on that, but it came with this heart shield. It's just painted on, and most Draftwriter shields are just glued in. This one fell out pretty quickly, so I had to glue it back in. Now this is like a kind of it's kind of like a waiter's knife or a wine knife. So it has a main spear point blade here, really strong pull. You can see it says support the cause. Strong pull on this, and the long pull match strike there pull is kind of shallow, so it's kind of hard to open. Really thin kind of spear point blade. Haven't really used that. I used it a little bit to cut like meat and things like that, but it has a pen secondary, super light spring on this one. Really no snap opening and no snap closed. It'll just stay. And then the third blade on here is, again, not super great snap, a little bit on this one, but it's kind of like a cutting, I don't know what this kind of, it's like a hawkbill blade shape, but it's for cutting the like foil wrap on the top of, or I guess wax, if you buy wine with wax tops, off of the top of a wine bottle. And I've actually used that one for that. But the main thing that I got this knife for is because it has a corkscrew, and it was really inexpensive. I think this one was under $10, but the corkscrew, I don't really know why this is. I mean, I've used lots of Victorinox knives to open, you know, wine bottles and things, and they don't really ever get loose, but this one just has not been able to take it. It is super loose. I mean, it almost feels like it's going to fall apart. And it really doesn't work that well either. I'm not 100% sure why, but it just doesn't seem to work as well as a Victorinox corkscrew. But you can see that because it has that play, a huge chip of bone has broken. Now it hasn't fallen off yet, but you know, it's very broken. So, you know, kind of a different knife. It's like a gun stock pattern that is like a sommelier, or you know, I don't know what you would call this this kind of knife with these blades, but it's a gun stock pattern, but you know, not really that well put together. Some gaps, and the springs are very uneven and things like that, but it's different and inexpensive. So I mean, I still use this one to like, you know, for the corkscrew and stuff, but I'm pretty sure it's gonna just fall apart here at some point. And then the last Draftwriter knife that I have right now is this one. I got this one, it was on an eBay auction, and I got it for $5.50 shipped. And so, I mean, like, you can't really beat that. But I got it because I really like that Draftwriter makes these undyed bone handles, these natural or white bone handles. They're good looking, I think. They're a little different than like Grade Eastern Cutlery or even Case's undyed bone handles. But I think that they look good. And the other thing I like about them is that a lot of Draftwriter's Barlows have a shield, and I think that a shield on a Barlow knife with the bigger bolster looks really bad. So I don't like Barlows with shields, and these natural white bone ones don't have them. So I had a peanut in their natural white bone that I gave away, but again, because it didn't have a shield and everything, I think it's a good looking thing. I actually got this one to try to dye it. I was thinking about dyeing my Great Eastern Cutlery number 78 American Jack, or Yankee Jack, no, I think American Jack, in white bone, but I decided not to. But this is a nice knife. It's centered. One thing you can notice there is that it has a really thin blade, so it cuts really well. And another reason I got this one specifically is because I had one of these small Barlows from Draftwriter a while back, and I used it like a lot, like really used it hard and abused it, and it took it, you know, well. So I decided to get another one. I don't even remember what happened to that one, but this one has no blade play. It has nice smooth action with good snap. Some slight gaps, but you can't really see light through them, so they're not too bad. And just a nice little knife. I mean, this is something you can put in your watch pocket and carry and use, and you know, not worry about it and things like that. So it's nice to have. And that's another nice thing about Draftwriter, because they are so inexpensive. You know, I'm not really that brokenhearted that this less than $10 knife is falling apart, because I got to try it out and use it, and I've used it some, and you know, that's fine. But you know, I've had more experiences like this one and these two, where this one's really nice, really no complaints with this one, and these two where they have a few small issues like gaps and, you know, maybe slightly lazy spring on the one blade on this one when I first got it. But really nice knives. Wouldn't really be upset with the fit and finish, even if it was more expensive. But at the price, it makes them really easy to get and like, and not have buyer's remorse, which sometimes when you buy, you know, the significantly more expensive knives, I mean, some Great Eastern Cutlery knives are going to be 10 plus times as expensive as these. Now, that's not at all, you know, kind of talking bad about that or saying that they're not worth that. I mean, I continue to buy Great Eastern Cutlery knives that are $100+. So, you know, I think that they're worth it, and I think they're really nice. I plan to buy more Case knives in the future. They're more expensive than these, by more like 5 times. So, you know, 4 to 5 times, I guess. So, you know, I think that those are worth their prices usually also. But sometimes if you buy an expensive knife and it has a slight issue that you wouldn't bother you on a knife at this price range, it does bother you. And this gives you the opportunity to try out a pattern, again, from it's owned by a U.S. company, so I really doubt that these companies that make these knives have, unethical business practices. I hope not. But because it's owned by Smoky Mountain Knife Works and they go and check on them and stuff, I think that they probably don't. So it allows you to buy and try out very different patterns and things without having, to put a whole bunch of money into it and possibly having buyer's remorse if they are not as perfect as you thought that they would be. Again, not saying that I think it's better to buy these very inexpensive knives versus the more expensive knives. I expect I'll probably buy more Draftwriter knives, but I probably will buy more gradation cutlery and case knives than I will Draftwriter knives. Just because I don't know. I guess it's easier to get excited about the gradation cutlery and things like that. But I thought I'd talk about Draftwriter knives here a little bit. Again, I think that at the prices, which they're almost always under $20, they offer a lot of value in the sense that you can get a good knife that you can use and not have to worry about hurting it or losing it. It can be replaced relatively easily, and you're not out too much money. But at the same time, you can also try some really different, really unique, characteristics like, the ceramic blade, the brass hardware, the copper hardware, the black bone, the black wash blades. And Draftwriter's actually, or Smoky Mountain Knife Works, is coming out with some carbon steel knives, kind of more high-end handle materials and things like that. So, I think I would recommend Draftwriter knives if you want to do it, try anything out like that, different patterns, different kind of features. Definitely go ahead and don't be afraid to get them. I think that they're a good value for the price that they are, and I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you've watched this far, I'm sure you're at least interested, but I've got lots of other videos. I've got knife talk videos, the longer videos on lots of other knives, traditionals, moderns, some fixed blades, and I've also got lots of 1-minute overviews if you want a real quick rundown on knives that come in and out of my collection. And if you'd like to get notifications when I do post those videos, I've got lots more coming up. Subscribe to my channel so you can see that and everything. And don't forget to go out and do good.